Hey y'all, I'm Kara Perez, founder of Bravely Go, and recently I lost my grandmother. It's been a really hard time and it's really sad, but today I don't want to talk about her. I actually want to talk about how my pursuit of financial independence and frugal living has impacted my ability to grieve. Today's video is brought to you by our patrons. Our patrons help me choose which topics to cover on our platforms, get exclusive event discounts, and a bonus video monthly. So if you like what we do on this channel, please consider becoming a patron. For those of you unfamiliar with my financial story, let me tell you where I come from and how I got to where I am today. I grew up in a low-income, single-parent household. We were on food stamps for about 6 years of my childhood, but we also had a lot of family support and a lot of other privilege. We were never poor. I was never housing insecure. I was never food insecure, but we did not have a lot of money. I'm the only one of my siblings to go to college, and I paid for college through a combination of things, including student loans. So when I graduated in 2011, I had $25,302 in student loan debt. Now, after I graduated, I worked in food service, and while I know that some people are very high earners in food service, that was not my experience. I was very low income for about the next 7 years of my life. In 2012, the year after I graduated, I made $15,257 for the year. In 2014, I made $16,360 for the year. And in 2015, big year for me, I made $22,916. And this was all while I was living in Austin, Texas. I had to pay my own rent, my own car insurance, provide my own food, all the adult tasks, right? All of the adult financial responsibilities I had to provide on my own. In 2014, at age 25, I had what I like to refer to as my quarter-life crisis, and I honed in on money as the thing that was ruining my life because my student loan debt was overwhelming. Compared to my income, $25,302 felt like $1 million. It just felt like a huge number I would never pay off. And I very distinctly remember thinking, I'm going to be in debt until I die. I'm never going to pay this off. This is awful. And I was seeing people around me do things like travel, get promotions, pay off their debt, or they never had any debt. And I just felt like money was strangling my adulthood. So I started blogging about how I was paying off my debt on a very low income. And I paid off my last $18,000 in 10 months. I worked 5 different part-time jobs, which, yes, was exhausting and terrible. It was not a good time, and I do not recommend it as a way to pay off your debt, but it was effective. I guess I lived on between $10,000 and $12,000 for 2 years, 2014, 2015, and part of 2016. When I tell you that I lived so freaking frugally, I am talking about like sewing up $2 Forever 21 leggings so I didn't have to get new ones. I was living off of catering leftovers because one of my 5 jobs was catering, and I would just bring home pounds of old food so that I didn't have to spend money at the grocery store. Anywhere that was within a 1 to 2 mile radius, I would walk instead of driving. I just cut absolutely everything out of my life so that I could throw every single penny I made towards debt. And of course, I want to say that while I did work very hard, I also had and still do have a lot of privilege. I'm white, I'm college educated, I'm able-bodied, and all of those things also helped me pay off my debt. I became debt-free in June 2015, and let me tell you, had a banger of a party. It was amazing. And since then, I've been really, really focused on building my savings and investments because I've been trying to put as big of a gap between me and financial ruin as possible. Coming from a low-income background and the experiences that I had in my early 20s of being so low income have really left a mark on me, and they have really motivated me to build as much financial security in my life as possible. I first discovered financial independence, early retirement in 2015 while I was paying off my debt because I was consuming so much financial content. I came across a lot of bloggers who were reaching FIRE or were hoping to reach FIRE, and I found it really inspirational. A lot of the messaging that I was getting on like 2015 financial Twitter was, quit your job and find true happiness. And as someone working 5 really crappy part-time jobs, I was enamored of the idea of not having to work any more crappy part-time jobs and having enough money to pay all my bills. So this path that I have been on since 2015 of building up my emergency fund, building up my investments, diversifying my income, growing my business, has put me in an interesting place this year where my life has become incredibly tumultuous. We don't make space for grief in the United States. There is no federal law that guarantees paid time off for bereavement, including funeral time. And right now is kind of a sad time, nationally speaking. 1.13 million Americans have died from COVID, which means about 75% of Americans either know someone who died from COVID or was hospitalized because of COVID. Several of our peer nations, including France, Japan, and New Zealand, all do have guaranteed paid time off for grieving. But here in the United States, only 3 states guarantee that same thing. The Fair Labor Standards Act, the foundation of U.S. labor policy, does not require employers to provide paid leave, including vacation time, to convalesce or time to plan or attend a funeral. In the United States, just 3 states have passed their own policies. Oregon requires employers to provide 12 unpaid weeks of leave, 2 of which can be used for bereavement after the death of a family member. Illinois offers 2 weeks of unpaid bereavement leave, but only after the death of a child. Maryland recently extended its Flexible Leave Act to require that employers who offer paid leave allow it to be used for bereavement. So even the states that do offer this don't really offer it, right? It's under very specific circumstances that you are allowed to have mostly unpaid time off to feel sad after the loss of a family member or a loved one. Since I work for myself, I took 4 days completely off work after my grandma passed, and that's a luxury that most Americans do not have. And it's a luxury that I have only because of the fact that I do work for myself and the specific ways that I have structured my business. I might be the only financial educator who will ever say this on camera, but my goal with my financial media business and my financial education business is actually not to run a 7-figure empire. I don't really care about having $1 million or multi-million-dollar business. That's not my goal. My goal is to put out quality financial education that actually helps people and ultimately leads to change in the way our broader financial systems work. So I want to make enough money to pay myself and to pay my employees. Of course, I want my business to be successful. But I don't define success singularly by how much revenue or profit the business brings in. So for example, in 2022, I only worked with 6 brands to do sponsored posts. Some people work with 6 brands a week, some people work with 6 brands a month. I worked with 6 brands over the course of 2022. Brand partnerships can be very lucrative, and they are absolutely going to continue to be a part of my business strategy. But the thing about brand partnerships is that they can be a lot of work and very demanding. I also want to make sure that any brands I work with, 1, make sense for my audience and are actually tools and companies that I can stand behind, and 2, are chill. I don't want to be recommending companies that are like using child labor. That's really not our jam around here. And if you follow us on Instagram, you know that there are many brands, primarily Wells Fargo, that I actively talk smack about and would never work with, no matter how much money they offered me. Building in things like our Patreon, our workshops, the money coaching that I do, and yes, the brand partnerships that I do take on has allowed me to build a level of flexibility in when and how I work into the business. I'm also a very frugal person. I have designed my lifestyle so that I don't need very much money month to month to pay all of my bills, and I'm not someone who gets a lot of joy out of shopping, so spending money is not one of my primary hobbies. This is not a judgment on anyone who does like shopping. I'm just expressing it's not really my jam. Frugality is my preferred way of living. I like having clothing swaps and getting my clothes for free. I like calling companies to negotiate annual fees and to negotiate down my bills. This is just the way that I want to live, a simpler approach to our kind of modern, hectic world. Frugality also means that since paying off my debt, I have been able to sock away money in my savings and investments at a faster rate than your average American. For example, last month alone, I made over $375 in interest just from my cash savings. This nest egg that I have built for myself means that if I need to take 4 days off to grieve, I can take 4 days off to grieve, and I don't have to worry about becoming homeless, not being able to pay a monthly bill, or my business collapsing around me. It also means I can spend money with a level of freedom that a lot of people can't. I was able to spend over $200 last minute to buy a flight home to attend my grandmother's funeral. And that flight did not in any way compromise my financial health. It didn't put me into debt. It didn't mean that I couldn't pay another bill this month, and it didn't make a huge dent into my cash savings. In my life, my personal preference for frugality and my entrepreneurship have allowed me a greater level of personal living flexibility. And when it comes to grieving, it has allowed me the time and space to be able to sit in my sadness. This is something that every American should have access to. And honestly, it's a national embarrassment that we don't. We are the richest country in the world. We should be allowed to take time off from our grind to be able to feel our very human feelings. I plan to continue working towards financial freedom. I am so happy with the way my life looks now, as opposed to my life at 24 and 25, when I did have debt, when I was low income, when something like a $200 flight would have absolutely broken my budget for the month. I enjoy the security that financial freedom, or at least pursuing financial freedom right now, affords me. But it's something that I wish that every American, and frankly every person, could have access to. Thanks for watching, y'all. If you liked this video and you want to support our channel, a thumbs up, smashing that like button goes a really far way, goes a really long way, and please hit subscribe on your way out.